Hi guys, have you ever noticed this? Whenever you're going somewhere new, the route to get there always feels longer. You're checking the GPS to see if you missed a turn. You're just like, are we there yet already? The kids are saying, are we there yet already? It just feels longer. But then you notice that on the way back, my kids are like, Mom, how come the ride back home feels shorter? My kids are always saying that. There's actually a psychological term for this, and it's called the return trip effect. When you're going somewhere unfamiliar, your brain is working harder. There's uncertainty, alertness, there's effort. Time feels stretched, but on the way back, your brain already knows where it's going. You're not striving anymore. You took that road to get there, so now you're taking the same road to get back, and your brain is relaxed because you're returning. So time feels compressed. And that same thing happens in life, not just on the roads. And it shows up all over the Bible. When life gets hard, we tend to go back to what's familiar. We find comfort in what we already know, and we go back, even if what we're going back to we know is unhealthy, but it's the familiar. That's not a modern problem. That is a biblical problem. Think about Israel. So today we're going to talk about Israel wanted to go back to Egypt. What happened when they did? This teaches us obedience, comfort, and trust in God. Spiritually, forward movement takes longer than going back. Israel reaching Egypt felt quick. They went back with no hesitation. Familiar food, familiar systems, familiar survival. The wilderness, that felt endless. Because Egypt wasn't just a place, it was a mindset. 40 years felt like forever, not because God was slow, but because formation feels longer than escape. Egypt was familiar bondage. The wilderness was unfamiliar freedom. And unfamiliar freedom always feels longer. That's why obedience feels slow. You're trusting God without seeing the full picture. You're walking by faith and not by sight. You're asking yourself, am I close? Am I hearing Him right? Meanwhile, comfort feels instant. Old patterns, old habits, old relationships. Deliverance didn't erase their desire to return. Exodus 14:11-12, right after the Red Sea miracle, Israel says to Moses, "Was it because there were no graves in Egypt that you brought us to the desert to die? It would have been better for us to serve the Egyptians." They had just witnessed God's power. They have just witnessed a miracle. They witnessed the parting of the Red Sea. They were able to get through on dry ground. Meanwhile, the Pharaoh's whole crew behind them came to attack them, and they all died because the water went back to its normal state. I mean, they weren't supposed to walk on dry ground. It was a sea, the middle of the sea. You know what I mean? So literally what happened to them was a miracle. And even though they were able to get out of Egypt, they're wanting to go back. They're wanting to go back because it's hard for them right now. They're going through a difficult time, and they want to go back to what's familiar, even if it was bad. They still preferred familiar slavery as opposed to uncertain freedom, because they didn't know what was going to happen. Yeah, they were free, but they had it rough. They didn't have food. They were tired. They were uncomfortable, and they chose to be slaves in a comfort state than being uncomfortable in a freedom state. But this teaches us something critical. You can be physically free and still mentally enslaved. I love how Moses replied to them. Moses says, "Do not be afraid. Stand firm, and you will see the deliverance the Lord will bring you today. The Egyptian you see today, you will never see again. The Lord will fight for you. You need only to be still." When you're going through a hard time, just trust Him. Trust Him. Be patient. If you're in a wilderness right now where you're in a waiting area, be patient. Be patient. It's just a waiting area. It's not going to last forever. He is going to pull you out. He got you out of whatever was binding you, confining you, torturing you, was unhealthy for you. He got you out of that. And now you're in the wilderness, in a waiting area. He's telling us, Be patient. The wilderness was not Egypt, but it was also not the promised land. It was a place of dependence, testing, formation. And this is where Israel struggled the most. In Exodus 16:2-3, when they were hungry, they said, "If only we had died by the Lord's hand in Egypt. There we sat around pots of meat." Seriously. Noticed. They romanticized Egypt, the place that was cruel to them. This place that had them as slaves. They romanticized it. They erased the suffering from their mind. They forgot all the bad stuff and were only thinking about the good things that happened. They exaggerated comfort. So I'm going to stop right here for a second. And I'm going to read all of Exodus. Not all of Exodus, but a little bit more. I'm going to go into read a little more into that. Just because I want you to hear what God told them, or what God did. And the children of Israel said unto them, Would to God we had died by the hand of the Lord in the land of Egypt, when we sat by the flesh pots, and when we did eat bread to the full. For ye have brought us forth into the wilderness to kill this whole assembly with hunger. Then said the Lord unto Moses, Behold, I will rain bread from heaven for you, and the people shall go out and gather a certain rate every day, that I may prove them whether they will walk into my law or no. And it shall come to pass that on the 6th day they shall prepare that which they bring in, and it shall be twice as much as they gather daily. And Moses and Aaron said unto all the children of Israel, At even then ye shall know that the Lord hath brought you out from the land of Egypt. And in the morning then ye shall see the glory of the Lord, for he had heard your murmurings against the Lord. And what are ye, that ye murmur against us? And Moses said, This shall be when the Lord shall give you in the evening flesh to eat, and in the morning bread to the full, for that the Lord heareth your murmurings in which ye murmur against him. And what are we? Your murmurings are not against us, but against the Lord. And Moses spoke unto Aaron, saying unto all the congregation of the children of Israel, Come near before the Lord, for he had heard your murmurings. So this verse just reminded me of how amazing God is, because the Israelites were hungry, and because they were so hungry, and they were going through they were going through trials and tribulations, and they were going through a hard time because they had just escaped Egypt and witnessed a whole miracle, crossed the Red Sea on dry ground. But now they're in this wilderness. It's dark and they have nothing to eat, and they're sitting here complaining. They're complaining, wanting to go back, telling Moses, like, why'd you bring us over here to die from hunger? You could have just left us where we were at. Yeah, we were slaves. Like, they probably forgot that they were slaves. You could have just left us where we were at, Moses. We don't need this. We were eating over there. Yeah, we were going through a hard time, but we were eating. You could have just left us there. So I just want to say this. Sometimes we are in a very, very, very difficult moment in our life, and it might not look, we don't know what we're going to eat the next day. We might not have $1 to our name. We might, I don't know, so many things, right? That can be happening in each and every one of our lives. But I just want you to know this. God listens to your prayers. He is listening to your murmurings. He is listening to your complaints. He is listening to your desires, to your wishes, to your wants, to your needs. And he will provide. Always. He always comes through. So there is never going to be a day where you don't have what you need. The necessity part, as long as your eyes are on him and as long as you trust him, he is going to provide. And that's a fact. That is a fact. And that, that's what the Israelites were like going through. They're like, sitting there like, oh my God, we have nothing to eat. We're going to die. And God came through and just gave them. In the morning, they woke up to bread. We cannot forget that we serve and we have an almighty God that created all of this created us, created the world, created the earth. So we can't possibly think that he's not going to have our back. But that's what fear does to your memories. When we are in a process of healing and we're moving forwardness, it feels endless because growth feels slow. Obedience feels uncertain. Trust stretches us. Later in Numbers 11:4-6, they complain again, longing for Egypt's food, even while eating manna from heaven. Why? Because manna required daily trust. Egypt required no faith. They just had it. And so for us, when we're healing or when we don't have what we need, trusting God is a requirement to get through the healing process. So in order for you to heal, you have to trust God. Anytime you're healing, trusting God is definitely a requirement. See, I can't make it without God. I know I can't. My healing comes fully surrendering to him. That is the way I was able to heal. Just not trusting in myself, not knowing, or not believing, and not trusting in what I was feeling, because healing is a blind spot. Healing, you don't know what's going to happen. You don't see it. It's like a restraint because you want to go back to what's familiar, but you know you can't because it's not healthy for you. Trust me, that first part is the resistance. This is the hard part. It's like exercising, right? When it's like you don't want to exercise, but after you get into the groove of it, it feels good and you want it. So you don't know what healing is because you haven't been healed. You've been in trauma. So now that you're healing, it's an unfamiliar territory. It feels long. It feels slow. But trusting in him will get you through it. Old habits, old patterns, old relationships. You don't need faith to go back. You already know the road. That's why it's so easy to go back. That's why the Bible constantly warns us not to confuse familiarity with safety. And that's the tension we live in too. God's promise often feels far, not because they're unreachable, but because they require becoming somebody new. And becoming always feels slow while you're inside of it. This is where it gets personal, because Egypt today can look like a toxic relationship, old habits, a mindset God already freed you from, a version of life that feels easier but smaller. The wilderness looks like healing, boundaries, obedience without instant results, trust without full clarity. But hear this clearly. Long does not mean wrong. Slow does not mean God is absent. The road you're on feels long right now. It may be because you're walking in obedience, not because you missed your direction. The way back will always feel shorter, but the way forward is the one that transforms you. So if you're tired, if you feel like you've been walking longer than you've expected, if you're tempted to return to what's familiar just because it's easier, remember this. God often takes the long way, because the long way is where we often learn to trust him. And the destination isn't just a place, it's who you become when you finally arrive. God didn't delay Israel to punish them. He delayed them to prepare them. Because freedom isn't just about leaving Egypt, it's about Egypt leaving you. The most serious moment comes in Numbers 14. The spies return from the promised land and they confirm the land is good, God's promise is real, but it looks intimidating. And Israel responds with fear. In Numbers 14:4, they say, "Let us choose a leader and go back to Egypt." This wasn't emotional venting, this was a decision. They chose comfort over calling, familiarity over faith, fear over promise. This choice had consequences. God tells them, this generation will not enter the promised land. The wilderness journey will be extended. It's not because God was cruel, because God refuses to let an enslaved mindset inherit a promise built for free people. Only Joshua and Caleb, those who trusted God, entered the promised land. I think we've all been in the wilderness before. I think I have gone back to my familiar zone because that's where I felt comfortable in. But you know what they say, comfort is the enemy of growth, because you know what, you're growing when you're uncomfortable. I hope this encourages you. If this spoke to you and blessed you, hit that like button, comment. I want to know what you think about all of this, and when I was reading it, I'm like, wow, That sounds like a lot of us, where the Israelites were taken out of Egypt. Egypt was enslaving Israel, was enslaving Israelis. God took them out of that situation. And even while God took them out of that situation, and God has already demonstrated miracles and type of miracles, and they've seen God's power, they want to go back because they don't got no food. They want to go back because they have no water. They were thirsty. And they're like, what are we going to eat? You just brought us here to die. You should have left us there. God said, all right, I got you. Gave them food, gave them bread. Then they were like, you're going to leave us thirsty. We're thirsty. We're going to die now because we're thirsty. God split the rock open and water just came rushing down. There you go. You know what I'm saying? Like, they just have to trust him, and it happens to us, and it happens to us. It's happened to me, where it's like life is hard, life is really hard, and we are so focused on the world. We're focused on the worldly thing. We're focused on our own capabilities. We're focused on, we have restrictions, and God doesn't. Like, we're focused, like our mindset could only go so far. That's why we don't understand everything that God does, because he's so much bigger than this. He's so much bigger than us. He is just so much bigger, and yet he's our Father, he's our provider, he's our friend, he's our confidor, he's our counselor, he's everything, and if he is telling me that rely on him and that I not need to be worried, and he wants me to have peace, then Lord, bring the peace on. Just bring the peace on, because I much rather feel peace than feel worried. I much rather feel peace than try to figure something out or try to do something that I don't even have control over. So I just pray, that he gives me the wisdom and the will to steward what I can control well, and my will can align with his. And I pray that, you guys, everybody watching this, has peace, knowing that you can trust him and he got you, and he's going to provide always for you, always.